At 23, Imani should have been chasing dreams, falling in love, and living life on her own terms. But instead of a warm bed, she had cold metal bars. Instead of freedom, she had chains. Locked in a filthy dog kennel, she was treated worse than an animal. While others her age were building careers and making memories, she was curled up on the hard ground, shivering through endless nights of suffering. It all started when her mother died. Her father, lost in grief, remarried Nasira, a woman with a heart as cold as stone. At first, it seemed like she wanted to be a good stepmother, but that was a lie. Slowly, she turned the house into a living nightmare. Imani became nothing more than a servant, a burden, an unwanted shadow in her own home. She wasn't allowed to sit at the dining table. While her father and stepsisters enjoyed warm meals, she was given scraps, if anything at all. She wasn't allowed to sleep in a bed. Those were for real family members. Instead, she was thrown outside, forced to curl up in a kennel like a stray dog. Day after day, she watched life pass her by from behind metal bars. The laughter of her stepsisters echoed through the walls, their perfect lives unfolding while she was left to rot. She wanted to scream, to fight, to run, but where could she go? Her father, the one person who was supposed to protect her, had turned a blind eye. He believed Nasira's every word, convinced that Imani was difficult, wild, not fit to live among them, and so he let her suffer. Each night, as the world outside slept peacefully, Imani lay awake, staring at the darkness, wondering how much longer she could endure. Was this her life forever? A prisoner in her own home, treated like nothing, forgotten by the world? What had she done to deserve this? The answers never came, only more pain. Imani's suffering did not end with the kennel. It was only the beginning. Day after day, night after night, she lived in a nightmare that no one could see, a slow, silent torture that stole every piece of her humanity. While her stepsisters enjoyed warm meals, expensive clothes, and a life of comfort, she was treated like she didn't exist. No, worse, she was treated like she wasn't even human. Her days started before the sun rose. Nasira would unlock the kennel, not out of kindness, but to make her work. Scrubbing floors, washing dishes, cleaning up after her stepsisters. It never ended. She was the invisible servant, the ghost that lived among them. But the moment she made a mistake, even the smallest one, the punishment came swiftly. A slap, a kick, a shove. Sometimes Nasira didn't even need a reason. She did it simply because she could. Food was a luxury Imani barely knew. While the family feasted on steaming rice, juicy meat, and fresh fruits, she was given scraps, bones with no meat, stale bread, sometimes nothing at all. Hunger gnawed at her stomach like a beast, but she had no choice. When she couldn't bear it anymore, she tried to steal a bite from the leftovers. The first time she did, Nasira caught her and made her regret it. She grabbed Imani by the hair, dragged her to the backyard, and threw her to the ground. "You want to eat like an animal?" Nasira sneered. "Then drink like one." Imani barely had time to react before Nasira grabbed the dog's water bowl, filled it with dirty water, and shoved it toward her. "Drink!" she demanded. Imani hesitated, her stomach twisting in disgust, but the sharp sting of a slap sent her crashing to the ground. Tears burned in her eyes as she leaned forward and took a sip. The water tasted like dirt, like filth, like shame. Her stepsisters stood nearby, laughing. To them, this was entertainment. To Nasira, this was justice. And her father, he did nothing. Kwame had once been a loving man, a man who cradled Imani in his arms when she was little, who promised to protect her forever. But that man was gone. Nasira had poisoned his mind, convinced him that his daughter was the problem. "She's unstable," she told him over and over. "She's not normal. She needs discipline." And he believed it. When Imani cried, when she begged, when she whispered, "Papa, please," he only shook his head. "Nasira knows best," he would say. "You need to listen to her." And so, she suffered. Even when she was sick, even when fever burned through her body and made her shake, Nasira refused to let her rest. "You're not dying," she would say, throwing a mop in her direction. "Get back to work." When Imani bled from the wounds on her body, no one helped her. When she collapsed from exhaustion, she was dragged back to the kennel like a dog that had outlived its use. There were nights she thought she wouldn't wake up in the morning. Nights when the hunger was so sharp, it felt like knives twisting in her stomach. Nights when the pain was so deep, she wished she could just disappear. But she didn't die. She survived. And with every passing day, with every ounce of suffering, something inside her began to change. She stopped crying. She stopped begging. The girl who once dreamed of love, of warmth, of family, she was gone. In her place was someone new, someone colder, someone waiting, because deep inside she knew this couldn't last forever. One day, something would change. One day, she would be free. For years, Imani endured pain in silence. She had no voice, no rights, no escape. But on one fateful night, something inside her snapped. The hunger, the exhaustion, the endless humiliation. It was too much. She couldn't take another day locked in that kennel, treated worse than the dogs she slept beside. She had to leave. She had to find her father. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a part of him that loved her. Maybe if she could just make him see, he would finally save her. That night, as the house fell silent and the lights went out, Imani made her move. She waited until she was sure Nasira and the others were asleep, then slowly pushed open the kennel's rusted door. The metal creaked, making her heart stop. She froze, holding her breath, listening. Nothing. The house remained silent. She took a deep breath and slipped out, her bare feet barely making a sound against the cold ground. Her body ached with every step. Her legs were weak from starvation, her skin bruised from countless beatings, but she forced herself forward. The back door was locked, but she knew another way out. Crawling through the bushes, she reached the side of the house where an old wooden fence stood. She had tried to climb it once before, years ago, but had been caught and punished so badly she never dared again. But this time, she had no choice. Summoning every ounce of strength, she gripped the rough wood and pulled herself up. The splinters bit into her palms, but she didn't stop. Her heart pounded as she swung her leg over and landed hard on the other side. Pain shot through her ankle, but she bit down on her lip to keep from crying out. There was no time for pain. She had to keep moving. The streets were empty as she ran, the night air cold against her thin, tattered clothes. Every step felt like a battle, but she didn't stop. Her father's house was only a few blocks away. She remembered walking these streets as a child, holding his hand, feeling safe. That memory pushed her forward. He would listen. He had to. By the time she reached his door, she was gasping for breath. Her hands shook as she knocked, then pounded, desperation taking over. "Papa," she cried, "please, open the door. It's me." The seconds dragged like hours. Then, finally, the door opened, and there he stood, her father. For a moment, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Shock, guilt. But before she could take another step, a voice cut through the air like a knife. "What is she doing here?" Imani felt her stomach drop as Nasira appeared behind him, her face twisted in anger. This wasn't right. She wasn't supposed to be here. This was supposed to be her moment, her escape. Her father was supposed to protect her, not stand beside the woman who had destroyed her life. "Papa, please," Imani sobbed, falling to her knees. "I can't go back. She hurts me. You have to help me. Please." But Nasira's lips curled into a smirk, and before Imani could say another word, she spoke. She ran away in the middle of the night. Look at her, barefoot, wild, out of control. "I told you, Kwame, she's unstable. She's dangerous." Imani shook her head frantically. "No, she's lying. She locks me in a kennel. She starves me." But her father only looked at her with tired eyes, as if she were a problem he didn't know how to solve. "You need discipline, Imani," he said, his voice empty. "Nasira is trying to help you." Imani's breath hitched. "Help me?" she whispered. "She treats me worse than an animal, and you call that help?" Nasira sighed dramatically. "You see how she talks to me? No respect, no gratitude. This is why she needs control." She placed a gentle hand on Kwame's arm, her voice turning soft, manipulative. "She's not well. If we let her do whatever she wants, she'll hurt herself. She needs structure. She needs me." And just like that, Imani saw it in his eyes, doubt turning into belief. He had already made his decision. He wasn't going to save her. He was going to send her back. Her heart shattered. "You're my father," she choked. "How can you do this to me?" Kwame sighed, rubbing his temples. "Go home, Imani. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Imani wanted to scream. She wanted to shake him, to make him see the truth. But before she could react, Nasira grabbed her wrist with an iron grip. "Come on, dear," she whispered coldly. "Let's go home." The walk back was worse than any punishment she had ever endured. The hope that had carried her to that door was now dead, crushed beneath the weight of betrayal. As soon as they stepped inside, Nasira's mask dropped. Her grip tightened, her nails digging into Imani's skin as she dragged her through the house. "You thought you could run," she hissed. "You thought you could escape me." Imani tried to pull away, but she was too weak. Nasira shoved her forward, sending her crashing to the floor. Then, without hesitation, she kicked her, hard. Imani gasped as pain exploded through her ribs, but Nasira didn't stop. The blows kept coming, her stomach, her back, her legs. It felt like her bones would shatter, like her body would give out. She curled into a ball, trying to protect herself, but it was useless. By the time Nasira was done, Imani couldn't move. She lay on the cold floor, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her vision swimming. She had nothing left, no strength, no hope. With a final sneer, Nasira grabbed her by the arm and dragged her across the floor, out the door, back to the kennel. She shoved her inside and locked the gate. "You'll never leave again," she spat before walking away. Imani lay there, her body broken, her heart shattered beyond repair. That night, something inside her died. For years, Mama Asha had watched the house next door with unease. Something felt off, but she couldn't put her finger on it. She had seen Imani before, thin, quiet, moving like a ghost. The girl never spoke, never looked up, and never left the house except to clean. The other women in the neighborhood gossiped about her, wondering why she never smiled, why she always wore long sleeves even in the heat. One evening, as Mama Asha watered her plants, she saw something that made her heart stop. Imani was crouched in the backyard, drinking from a bowl on the ground. At first, Mama Asha thought her eyes were playing tricks on her, but no, the girl was lapping up water like an animal. Her hands were shaking, her body hunched over in fear. Mama Asha gripped the edge of her chair, her stomach twisting. No human should live like. The next morning, she kept watching. When the back door opened, Imani stepped out, her movements slow, as if every step hurt. Her clothes hung loosely over her frame, and when she reached up to wipe sweat from her forehead, her sleeve slipped down. Mama Asha gasped. Dark bruises covered her arm, some fresh, some faded. The sight made her blood run cold. She couldn't ignore this. She wouldn't. That night, she picked up her phone and dialed the police. "I need to report something," she said in a hushed voice, afraid someone might hear. "There's a girl next door, and she's not safe. She's treated worse than an animal." The officer on the other end asked for details, but Mama Asha hesitated. Would they believe her? Would they even come? "If you don't believe me, come see for yourself," she said firmly. The officer agreed to send a patrol in the morning. Mama Asha hung up, her hands still shaking. She had done what she could. Now, all she could do was wait. The night felt endless. She kept imagining the worst. What if the police came and did nothing? What if they left and Imani was punished for it? The fear gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. Doing nothing was worse. At dawn, she sat by her window, watching. The back door creaked open, and Imani stepped out, just like every morning. Her movements were sluggish, her shoulders hunched. Behind her, Nasira appeared, arms crossed, watching like a hawk. Mama Asha's heart pounded. Where are they? Then, in the distance, a police car appeared. It rolled down the street slowly, stopping right in front of the house. Two officers stepped out, their eyes scanning the yard. Nasira stiffened, her expression unreadable. Imani froze, her hands gripping the broom she was holding. The air grew heavy with tension. "Good morning," one of the officers called out, walking closer. "We received a report about possible mistreatment in this home." Nasira let out a sharp laugh. "Mistreatment? I don't know what you're talking about." The officer's gaze shifted to Imani. He took in her thin frame, the bruises barely hidden under her sleeves, the way she wouldn't meet his eyes. He stepped forward. "Miss, are you all right?" Imani's lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at Nasira, her hands tightening around the broom handle. Mama Asha held her breath. If she didn't speak, they would leave. And if they left, Imani wouldn't survive the consequences. The officer crouched slightly, lowering his voice. "You don't have to be afraid. If you need help, just say the word." A moment of silence stretched between them. Imani swallowed hard. Her whole body trembled. Then, in a voice so soft it was almost a breath, she whispered, "Please, help me." The officer's expression hardened. He turned to his partner. "Call for backup." Nasira's face twisted in anger. "Now wait just a minute." "Step back, Mom," the officer said firmly. "We need to investigate." Mama Asha exhaled, her hands clutched together. Imani had finally spoken, and this time, someone was listening. The early morning air was thick with tension as Detective Jabali and his team pulled up to the house. They had heard disturbing reports, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to witness. Armed with a warrant, they stepped out of their vehicle, their eyes scanning the property. The house looked ordinary, too ordinary, but the truth lay beyond the walls, hidden from the world. The officers moved swiftly, knocking firmly on the door. Nasira opened it, her face twisted in an irritated scowl. "What is this about?" she demanded. "We have a warrant to search the premises," Jabali stated, his voice firm. Nasira scoffed. "This is ridiculous. You people have nothing better to do." Ignoring her, the officers pushed past her and spread out. Some checked the rooms, while Jabali led a team toward the backyard. The moment he stepped outside, a foul stench filled his nose. Dirt, sweat, and something rotten. He followed the scent, his gaze landing on a rusted cage near the corner of the yard. What he saw made his blood run cold. Inside the cage, curled up like a beaten dog, lay a young woman. Her clothes were torn, her skin covered in bruises and dried blood. Her wrists were raw, her fingers trembling as she gripped the bars weakly. Dirt clung to her body, her hair tangled beyond recognition. She wasn't just malnourished, she was fading. For a moment, the officers stood frozen, their minds struggling to process the sight. A human being, locked in a kennel like an animal. This wasn't just abuse, it was something far worse. Imani lifted her head slightly, her hollow eyes meeting Jabali's. Her lips trembled as she tried to form words, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Please help me." Jabali felt something crack inside him. Without hesitation, he moved forward, unlocking the cage. As the door swung open, Imani flinched, her body instinctively preparing for pain. But no blow came. Instead, a strong yet gentle hand reached for her. "You're safe now," Jabali said, his voice softer than before. The moment he touched her, her body collapsed forward. One of the officers caught her, cradling her weak frame as she gasped for breath. Her fingers clung to his uniform, as if afraid he would vanish. Meanwhile, inside the house, Nasira's arrogance crumbled as another officer read her rights. "You have the right to remain silent." The words rang through the air as cuffs snapped around her wrists. "Wait! This is a mistake!" Nasira screeched. "She's unstable. She belongs in that cage." Jabali turned, his eyes burning with disgust. "The only one who belongs in a cage is you." As Nasira was dragged away, Kwame stood frozen in the doorway, his face pale. His eyes darted between Imani and his wife, confusion and guilt clouding his expression. But Jabali had no sympathy. "You let this happen," he said coldly. "You chose to believe a monster over your own daughter." Kwame's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, he saw the truth, and it crushed him. As the officers carried Imani toward an ambulance, word had already spread. Neighbors gathered, their faces filled with shock and anger. Phones recorded every moment, and soon the world would know. The girl in the cage had been freed, but justice was just beginning. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, footage of Imani's rescue flooded social media, television screens, and news websites. The world watched in horror as officers carried her fragile body out of the backyard, wrapped in a blanket, her hollow eyes barely able to stay open. People gasped at the sight. This was not a criminal, not a danger to society. This was a victim, a woman who had been trapped in hell for years. Nasira, handcuffed and screaming, was shoved into a police car. "This is a mistake! She's dangerous! She deserved it!" she shrieked, her face twisting in rage. But no one was listening. Her words carried no weight now. The world had seen the truth. At the hospital, doctors rushed to treat Imani. They cleaned her wounds, checked her vitals, and hooked her up to IV fluids. She had bruises covering her body, old scars marking the years of torment she had endured. Her bones jutted out from her skin, evidence of prolonged starvation. Yet despite it all, she remained silent, her lips pressed together as if speaking would shatter her. Meanwhile, the police dug deeper into her past. They pulled school records, medical reports, anything that would reveal who Imani truly was before Nasira stole her life. What they found shocked everyone. Imani was not mentally unstable. She had once been a bright, ambitious young woman with dream of becoming a writer. Her teachers had praised her intelligence, her creativity, her kindness. Before her mother died, she had been an honor student, a girl full of life and potential. But after Nasira entered her world, all of that vanished. One by one, her dreams were stripped away until she was reduced to nothing more than a prisoner in a cage. When the media uncovered the truth, outrage erupted. News anchors condemned the cruelty. Celebrities spoke out. Hashtags demanding justice flooded the internet. People couldn't believe that in a world filled with laws and protection, a young woman had been forced to live like an animal while those around her turned a blind eye. And then there was Kwame. He sat in the hospital waiting room, his face buried in his hands. He had refused to see Imani, too ashamed to face the daughter he had abandoned. He had spent years believing Nasira's lies, telling himself that what was happening to Imani was necessary, that she was unstable, dangerous, beyond saving. But now, as the world uncovered the truth, he was forced to confront the reality he had ignored. The police questioned him, demanding answers. How could you let this happen? Kwame had no response, no excuses, no justifications. He had chosen comfort over courage, silence over action. And now, the weight of that choice crushed him. Days passed, and Imani slowly regained her strength. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice carried a quiet determination. She answered the detective's question, told them everything she had endured. Each word was another nail in Nasira's coffin. When Kwame finally gathered the courage to see her, he stood frozen outside her hospital room. His daughter lay in the bed, staring out the window, her hands folded in her lap. She looked smaller than he remembered, fragile, yet unbroken. Imani, he whispered, stepping inside. She turned, her eyes locking onto his. There was no anger in them, no hatred, just an emptiness that cut deeper than any scream ever could. I didn't know, Kwame said, his voice trembling. You thought what she wanted you to think, Imani interrupted, her voice quiet but firm. Tears welled in his eyes. I'm sorry. Imani studied him for a long moment, then turned back to the window. Sorry doesn't change what happened. Kwame felt his chest tighten. He wanted to beg, to plead for forgiveness, but deep down, he knew he didn't deserve it. Outside, the world continued to talk about Imani's story. But for her, this was not just a headline. It was her life, a life that had been stolen, but one she was determined to reclaim. The courtroom was silent, but the air was heavy with anticipation. Every seat was filled, cameras lined the back wall, and reporters scribbled furiously. The world had watched Imani's suffering unfold, and now they were here to witness justice. Imani sat at the front, her posture straight, her hands steady. She was no longer the frail, broken woman found in that cage. She had gained weight, regained strength, and most importantly, reclaimed her voice. Her eyes, once hollow, now burned with quiet fury. Across from her, Nasira sat in the defendant's chair, her face unreadable. She wore a pressed suit, her hair neatly pulled back, as if she were attending a business meeting rather than standing trial for years of unimaginable cruelty. But there was no hiding from the truth now. The evidence was overwhelming. Photos, medical reports, witness testimonies. The world had seen Imani's wounds. They had heard her story. When the judge called her to testify, Imani walked to the stand without hesitation. The courtroom held its breath. Tell us, in your own words, what happened to you, the prosecutor said. Imani took a deep breath. Then she spoke. She told them everything. The years of torment, the beatings, the starvation, how she was treated worse than an animal, locked away while her stepsisters lived in comfort, how she had begged for mercy and was met with fists, how she had prayed for someone to save her, but no one came. As she spoke, some people in the courtroom wiped away tears, others clenched their fists in anger, but Nasira, she sat still, her expression cold. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't cry or beg for forgiveness. She didn't even deny the accusations. Instead, she lifted her chin and said, "I did what was necessary." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Even her own lawyer looked stunned. "Necessary?" the judge repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. "She was unstable," Nasira said, her voice firm. "She needed control. If I hadn't done it, she would have destroyed herself." A wave of disgust rippled through the crowd. Imani's hands curled into fists, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. The world could see Nasira for what she truly was. The judge shook his head, his patience gone. He turned to Imani. "Do you have anything to say before I deliver my verdict?" Imani stood. She faced Nasira, her voice steady. "You tried to break me. You tried to erase me, but I am still here." The judge nodded. Then his voice rang out, final and firm. "Nasira, you are sentenced to 25 years in prison. No parole." A roar of approval erupted in the courtroom. Reporters rushed to write their headlines. Justice had been served. As Nasira was led away in handcuffs, Imani felt something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. Imani's story spread like wildfire. The moment Mosey, a well-respected journalist, published the details of her suffering, the world reacted. News stations ran her story. Headlines screamed of her unimaginable ordeal, and social media exploded with outrage. People from all walks of life came together, united by one cause: to help Imani rebuild what had been stolen from her. Donations poured in. Strangers who had never met her sent money, clothes, and letters of encouragement. Celebrities spoke out, demanding justice not just for Imani, but for all victims of abuse. Activists called for stricter laws to prevent such horrors from happening again. Despite the overwhelming support, Imani struggled to adjust. The sudden flood of kindness was unfamiliar after years of cruelty. She wasn't used to being treated like a human being, let alone someone worthy of love and care. At first, she hesitated to accept the help, but Mosi, who had been with her from the start, reassured her. "This isn't charity," he told her. "This is the world making things right." With time, she allowed herself to believe it. She received therapy, slowly healing the wounds that couldn't be seen. For the first time in years, she had a warm bed, clean clothes, and the freedom to walk outside without fear. She was given a scholarship, an opportunity to chase the dreams that had been stolen from her. Education became her refuge, a place where she could prove to herself and the world that she was more than a victim. People who had once pitied her now saw her as something else entirely: a survivor, a fighter, a symbol of resilience. One day, Mosi visited her and handed her a folder. "Your story has changed lives," he said, "but now it's time to write your own future." Inside the folder was an opportunity, an invitation to share her journey with the world, to stand before others who had suffered, to speak not as a victim, but as a survivor who refused to be silenced. Imani looked at him, then at the papers in her hands. For so long she had been locked away, hidden from the world. But now the world was listening, and she was finally ready to speak. Kwame sat outside Imani's new home, his hands trembling as he waited. He had rehearsed his words 1,000 times, but nothing felt right. The weight of his guilt was crushing. Every night he saw her face in his nightmares, the daughter he had abandoned, the child he had failed. He had believed Nasira's lies, ignored the signs, turned his back when she needed him the most. Now he had to face her. When Imani finally stepped out, Kwame barely recognized her. She was no longer the frail, broken girl locked away like an animal. She stood tall, strong, with a quiet power in her eyes. She had survived, and she had done it without him. "Imani," he started, his voice cracking, "I came to beg for your forgiveness." She didn't answer, just stared at him with an unreadable expression. "I was blind," he continued. "I let Nasira poison my mind. I should have seen the truth. I should have saved you. But instead, I let you suffer. I can't live with this guilt. His voice broke, and he dropped to his knees. Please, my child, give me a chance to make things right. Imani exhaled slowly. There was no anger in her eyes, no hatred, just a deep, quiet sadness. She had spent years longing for this moment, imagining all the things she would say if her father ever came back. But now that he was here, begging, she felt nothing. You had a chance, she said, her voice steady. You were my father. You were supposed to protect me. But when I begged you for help, you let her drag me back. Kwame flinched, his head dropping in shame. I was weak. I was a fool. I don't hate you, Imani continued. But you are no father of mine. Kwame's breath hitched. He looked up at her, desperation in his eyes. Please, Imani, don't shut me out. I want to be part of your life again. She studied him for a long moment, then shook her head. You want peace for yourself. You want to erase your guilt, but you don't get to use me to fix what you broke. Tears streamed down Kwame's face as he realized the truth. He had lost her, not because she was cruel, not because she sought revenge, but because some wounds could never be undone. Without another word, Imani turned and walked back inside, closing the door behind her, and Kwame, still kneeling, was left to face the emptiness he had created. The stage lights shone brightly as Imani stepped forward, her presence commanding the silent attention of thousands. The audience, a sea of faces filled with admiration, waited for her to speak. She took a deep breath, looking out at the people who had come to hear her story, not one of tragedy, but of triumph. They put me in a cage, she began, her voice steady and powerful. But I became a lion, and lions don't bow. The crowd erupted into applause, but Imani remained composed. She wasn't here for sympathy. She wasn't here to be seen as a victim. She was here to remind the world that pain does not define a person. Strength does. She told them about the years of suffering, of being treated worse than an animal, of screaming for help and being ignored. She spoke of betrayal, of the night she ran to the one person who should have saved her, only to be cast back into the darkness. She described the hopelessness, the silence, the night spent wondering if she would ever be free. Then she spoke of the moment it all changed, the raid, the police breaking down the door, the way the world gasped in horror when they saw what had been done to her, how she had stood in court, no longer a prisoner, no longer afraid, facing the woman who tried to destroy her. But I didn't let my story end there, Imani said, looking into the eyes of every survivor in the audience. I didn't let them win, because the truth is, suffering can break you or it can build you into something unshakable. She told them about rebuilding her life, about therapy, education, the people who stood by her when she had no strength left. She spoke about finding her voice, about turning pain into power, and now she stood before them, not as the girl locked in a kennel, but as a woman who refused to be defined by her past. You are not what they did to you, she said, her voice rising with conviction. You are not their cruelty, not their lies, not their betrayal. You are what you choose to become. And if I can rise, so can you. The room was filled with tears, with hope, with the unspoken stories of countless survivors who saw themselves in her. And as they rose to their feet, applauding, cheering, crying, Imani knew she had turned her pain into something greater. She walked off the stage, not as a victim, not even just as a survivor, but as a warrior. From a kennel to a throne, she had claimed her place, and no one would ever silence her again. Your support can help raise awareness and give hope to those who need it. Like, share, and subscribe to keep these voices heard. Together, we stand for justice and survival.